Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Eddie Liger Power Hour. This time joined by Carlos Garrido, who's going to be bringing back his interview show soon, which I'm excited for to see the first interview. So get hyped for that. But he's also joining me today. As some of you know, I had a change in my work schedule, so I'm busy Wednesdays now. So the weekend is going to be the new destination for the Power Hour. I'll be coming at you Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and we'll just make it. I know some people want a hard and fast schedule. It just doesn't really work with my wrestling schedule. So we're just going to shoot for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you'll have to stay tuned to see which day it's going to be if you want to catch the stream live. But was able to come at you guys with the stream tonight. Obviously, a lot to discuss. We haven't been on in a while. A lot has happened. Primarily, I think what everyone is thinking about right now, what's on everyone's mind, is the election of Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist member of the Democratic Party, as the mayor of New York, defeating Andrew Cuomo or Chris Cuomo or whatever Cuomo. I don't know. The Cuomo brothers, I'll never in my life be bothered to figure out which one is which. It's just like the amalgamation of American liberalism into two brothers who are basically the same person. But yeah, we'll be breaking down Zohran, be talking about why Marxist-Leninists are always right and why that sort of meme hits different when the American left is yet again cheering on another democratic socialist attached to the Democratic Party, even after the failures of Obama and the Squad and Bernie Sanders and whatever else. And of course, Carlos and I can offer a unique perspective on this because we met working in the Bernie Sanders campaign. So we watched firsthand the failures of trying to push socialism within the Democratic Party. But we're going to be talking about that, going to be talking about the hype around Zohran, what it means, and we might go on a little tangent about the politics and history of bodybuilding. So look forward to that. You got anything to say, Carlos, before I roll the intro?
No, let's do it.
Sweet.
High Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said: "You look like a Russian, you look like a red, and if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard."
All right, folks. I got my Duolingo streak to 1,084 days during that intro. So
There we go.
very special. Let's go. I see a lot of people, before we jump into it, are asking about Metal Gear Red. No, it is not canceled. It was on hiatus because Chairman Haas was in China touring the Communist Party Museum, and doing stuff that just gave me extreme FOMO, extreme jealousy while he was over there. Same as when Carlos was over there. But that's why the podcast was on hiatus. And the next episode is actually planned to be filmed tomorrow. And then my media team will be chopping that up and getting it out as soon as possible after that. So, yeah, look forward to another episode of Metal Gear Red soon, and subscribe to the ACP YouTube channel if you haven't yet.
I almost had a stroke because I think the person confused the name of the podcast with Red America. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's Red America. I bust my ass for countless hours to crank it out, along with the rest of the DOE, Comrade Jonathan and Bridget and Annie, who are doing great work, and Chris, to help with cranking out basically a book's worth of content on a monthly basis, which is insane. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. Our 13th issue just rolled out. So last month we celebrated the 1-year anniversary. And guys, it's really cutting edge stuff. You know, if you would have told me that we would have been able to crank it out so consistently, I would have believed you, but it would have been tough. And it's been a hell of a lot of work. So if you're in the party, and if you're not in the party and are interested in reading party literature, which includes some of the leading Marxist theorists from around the world, because we're regularly translating stuff from Spanish, Chinese, etc., make sure to subscribe to Red America. It's a good way to also help financially the party. So
definitely, it's worth it. I promise. There's some great articles in there, all sorts of them. I see this person say at least Cuomo didn't win the mayoral election, and I mean, if there is anything to celebrate here, that was it. That's what I was telling people. Like when they asked me about it, I'm like, for one, I said this is Obama 2.0, because a lot of like normies were asking me about it, like kids at wrestling practice and stuff. And I said, well, I'm glad that Andrew or Chris Cuomo or whatever the hell Cuomo it was didn't win, I guess. That's the one thing to celebrate, because as far as what Zohran will accomplish, I mean, as always, rooting for him. I hope he gets the rent lowered. I mean, Chris Morlock, our comrade, would probably disagree with that and say, well, you know, everything that he's doing is basically to redistribute the wealth of imperialism, you know, to the peasants, to the workers, so that they won't up and revolt. And, you know, he's doing that in New York City, as he calls Cuba a dictatorship and Venezuela a dictatorship, in really the belly of the beast. Like, exactly, like that's where Wall Street is. That's where the New York Stock Exchange is. So he's saying we should redistribute more fairly the wealth of the New York Stock Exchange, which is extracting all of this wealth and value from the working class and from foreign working classes, while condemning socialist revolutions in Latin America as dictatorships, and aiding, you know, with his rhetoric, the regime change efforts against those dictatorships. So this is the core contradiction with all these reformists, though. You know, they all, at least in the imperialist countries like where we are here, that's basically their whole shtick is, we have all this wealth that we've stolen from other countries. Let's, you know, use it to give people healthcare so they don't overthrow the whole damn system. And, you know, and not even only that, but the reforms that they advocate for, I would support some of those reforms being enacted, but they don't even get through these reforms that they advocate for, because they end up either becoming co-opted by the Democratic Party or crushed, kind of like what happened to Bernie there.
yeah, it's interesting. I did a video that got a little bit of traction on Instagram right after Zohran got elected, and the comments, man, they weren't happy. A lot of the people were not happy. I'd say 99% of the people were misinterpreting what I was trying to say. There's a very serious understanding or comprehension crisis, I think, in our country, where you can say something, and if it triggers someone's mind, they'll twist it in whatever way they need to in order to combat it and retort with something that really doesn't make much sense. But I think, look, we're obviously extremely critical of Zohran, the DSA, and the people that are treating this like a political event, right? I hate that I always have to repeat this, but in philosophy, an event is something that actually breaks the chain of everydayness. Like the world is just going, and an event is something that, boom, radical rupture. You have that November 7th in Russia, 1917. That's an event. That's something that breaks through the everydayness. What happened with Zohran is not an event. Another Democrat came into a position of power over the New York mayoral seat. And that's not historically, there's no proof that can show that these supposed democratic socialists working within the Democratic Party can actually do anything to challenge the establishment or fulfill any of the aspirations that they claim to have. What ends up happening, as Eddie said, is the opposite. Instead of pushing the Democrats left, they end up just getting co-opted by the so-called center of the Democratic Party, and people's livelihoods because of the campaign just get attached to the Democratic Party. And what is the Democratic Party? It's the establishment of empire. You know, it and the Republican Party are the parties of empire. That's the party that has been carrying out a G-side, or was carrying out a G-side for 2 years, was supporting the Zionist entity. I mean, there's not a more evil party in the big 2-5 than the Democrats and the Republicans, right? The uniparty. And to work within that institution and consider a victory for the Democratic Party in any way, shape, or form as historic, as a left-wing event in politics, is to be completely blinded to the role that these institutions play for the dominant order, the role that they play for hegemony. And look, if Zohran had ran in a social democratic party, if Bernie, after getting cheated in 2016, had made his own party, which is what a bunch of advisors were telling him, if he had made his own party and Zohran ran with it and he had won, we would 100% support him. We'd be critical of policy and stuff, but we would support him. Just like our friends in England are supporting the idea of having a new party with Jeremy Corbyn and the other lady, I forget what her name is, but because it would be a break from the establishment parties, from the mainstream uniparty in that country. But that's not what happened here. So there's no left victory because there's no sovereign left to speak of. Who are you winning people over to? You're winning them over to the Democratic Party. That's it.
And I mean, I get the hype. I get the desire to have a win and to be optimistic. And I probably would be swept up in it if I hadn't already been swept up in it 4 years ago. And that's what's so frustrating about this, is that we've had these social democrats, these democratic socialists, run as Democrats repeatedly. And the same thing has happened every single time. And yet people fall for it all over again with no skepticism, and sometimes like a level of hyperbole that's almost like unbelievable. Like this post I'm about to share. Once I share my screen here. This chaotic leftist with the trans flag and the LGBTQ flag and the rose, the DSA rose, says, "This will be the most important global win for the left, maybe ever. New York City is the financial and, most importantly, the cultural capital of the world." So not even just saying, hey guys, you know, Zohran winning is a good thing. We should celebrate it because he's better than Cuomo and he's pushing, you know, social democratic economic policies. Not even making an argument like that, but saying, no, Zohran's victory is more important than the Bolshevik Revolution. It's more of a victory for the working class than the Cuban Revolution, than, you know, any of these times in history where corrupt dictatorships were overthrown by the working class and replaced with worker states. You know, that all pales in comparison to New York electing a Democratic Party governor. I mean, it's absurd. And this is the kind of, like, honestly, with the young people who follow me on TikTok, it's like, whatever, like, have your Obama moment, you know, have your Bernie moment that I had, where you get all excited for this guy and then nothing happens. And then you wake up to the reality of it. But for the people who already lived through that, who are falling for it again and calling it the greatest victory of the working class in history, like, man, were you not awake during Bernie and the squad and Obama and all of this? And, you know, that's what I said in my response. Like, this is just the kind of delusion we're trying to warn people against. Like, pump the brakes. You know, they're acting like Zohran's about to invade the New York Stock Exchange and seize it on behalf of the people, when in reality, all he wants to do is redistribute the wealth of those corporations a little bit more evenly and use it to pay for healthcare. And even that, he's probably not going to be able to accomplish. I mean, almost surely not, because he's going to be blocked at every turn because he's working within the Democratic Party and the bourgeois establishment and the system. And And as Carlos said, it's nothing new to have, like, even when Bernie ran, it was something new to hear a Democrat talking about economic policy all the time and talking about universal health care and things like that. But it's not anything new anymore. All the Democrats talk about single payer. Now, they don't mean it, but they all, like, Mayor Pete started doing Medicare for all who want it. They all stole Bernie's policies because they knew that they were popular. So we're already there. So where is Zohran pushing the Overton window? Everybody, majority of Republicans say they want single payer health care. Like, that battle's already been won. It's the idea of getting people into a political vehicle that can actually change shit. And the Democrats will never be that.
And Eddie, what's the one based thing that Gorbachev ever did? I don't know if I've told you about this, but I read it in a book about the collapse of the USSR recently. There was one moment where Yeltsin broke with party discipline and criticized Gorbachev, and he sent him to a mental asylum. And that's the treatment the Soviets would give to anyone who tweets insanely ridiculous stuff like what that person just tweeted. You know what it is to say, in the face of a revolution that lifted 500 million people out of poverty, out of colonialism in China, and then to turn around and say a Democrat getting elected as mayor of New York is even bigger than that. It's the biggest win for the left in history. It's so completely delusional that in a socialist society, they would get similar treatments to what Yeltsin ended up getting at the behest of Gorbachev. But look, it's interesting because you have this spurious dialectic, this fake dialectic, and I think Haas got a little bit into it in a TikTok video he just did. The Republicans and the right wing, they're making Zohran so fucking based by calling him this Islamist Stalinist or whatever the fuck. And then these pseudo leftists, a lot of them are young people. You can't really blame them because they haven't had the experiences that we have had. But they're running with that and making all of these based memes about New York with Stalin portraits all over and Ayatollah Khomeini portraits all over. And it makes them infinitely more based than what they actually are. And this isn't new. I remember during the Bernie campaign, we would all share with each other a bunch of Bernie memes where Bernie was turning around and then he'd turn into Lenin or something like that. But that's the thing. The right wing makes him cooler than he actually is. They elevate the significance of this. And then the people that are involved, in order to, they take that and they run with it. They kind of appreciate how the right wing, I think, reacts to it because it feeds into their fantasy. And that's why it's so uncomfortable. We were talking about this just a moment ago. It sucks being the party pooper because everyone's having a party right now. Everyone's enjoying this. All of the leftists in New York and the DS, everyone's having so much fun right now. And we don't want to be like the meme of people partying and then we're in the corner by the door. They don't even know it isn't a real victory. But just wait 6 months and people will realize it. People will realize it in time. Please find one moment where we have missed in terms of our political assessments, right? When it comes to stuff like this, please find one moment. In 6 months, people will realize that this is a nothing burger. This isn't an actual victory for the left. In many ways, perhaps because of how the right wing is reacting to it, they're going to blame socialism for whatever catastrophe they end up spinning out of Zohran's administration. They'll see in time that this is not the political event. And if it is, I'll fucking shove my words back in and I'll apologize. I'll be the first to say, look, I was extremely wrong. We were extremely wrong. But it sucks to be the party pooper, but these people, they structure the world through these fantasies. And the most uncomfortable position that a person could have is the one that pops the fantasy for someone else.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to think of one time that we were wrong in the past, it was when we got excited for Cornel West because we thought he was going to break from the Democrats. And then he ended up being, still sort of captured by these, liberal academic institutions and couldn't have a conversation with Jimmy Dore without fighting over culture war stuff, But that was, like we said, that shows that if someone did try to break with the Democratic Party, even if they weren't a Marxist-Leninist, we would support it. But it's remaining trapped within this this paradigm of the two-party system. And I kind of made a video based on that idea. Like, all the right wingers are portraying Zohran as, you know, the second coming of Stalin, which we wish he was, of course. And like, this is how I would react if he was the second coming of Stalin. Oops, I gotta unmute.
Zohran Mamdani just got elected. He's literally a communist. Well, what the hell does that mean? It means he's gonna scare all of the shareholders in New York City, and they're gonna leave the country. For real? Yes! Zohran Mamdani.
Like, that's how I would react if Zohran was actually what the right wingers are saying he is. Like, he's gonna seize all the corporate Wall Street shareholders' wealth and centrally plan the economy. It's like, fuck, I wish, guys. You're such idiots. It is such a like, almost disturbing false dialectic, because it's so frustrating to watch, you know, this fight play out between the leftists and the rightists, and they're both just so wrong. But at the end of the day, most of them want the same thing, which is the change of the status quo. But Scorpion Sag, thank you so much for the super chat, brother. He says, cue up the Charlie Brown and Lucy holding the football when it comes to Zohran being able to get anything done as a DSA politician in the Democratic Party. Absolutely. It's that every time they hold the football out, that, you know, single payer healthcare, rent ceiling football, and then they pull it away at the last second. But it's like, this time it's like, how are people even falling for it? Like, he's already condemned Venezuela and Cuba as dictatorships, and now he's come out immediately and said that he would meet with Jamie Dimon and Bill Ackman, these Wall Street billionaires, to talk about the future of New York City. They're like, you know, we're here to offer our help. And Zohran responds by saying, yes, I'll meet with you. The richest people, the source of the problem, not just in New York City, but in our whole fucking country. He's like, yes, I'll meet with you so you can plan the policy. And then literally George Soros' son, bro. Like, how much more obvious does it need to be, you guys? I'm sorry. I get the hype. I get that you're looking for a victory, but he's taking your George Soros' damn son is celebrating this guy's victory. One of the most politically influential oligarchs in all of America. The heir to his fortune is celebrating Zohran. Like, if Zohran was a Fidel, if he was a Che, if he was a Stalin, like the right is saying that he is, Alex Soros would not be fucking celebrating. I'll tell you that much.
And not only oh boy, this is do you hear the? I think it might be from okay, and not only an oligarch, but one of the most ardently anti-communist ones. George Soros, of course, bragged about the role that he played in the perhaps the worst catastrophe of the whole 20th century, or one of the worst catastrophes, which was the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, what it did to Russia, to Eastern Europe, was just horrendous. And he bragged about how his Open Society Foundation played an essential role in bringing that down. So again, the bulwark, one of the bulwarks, one of the vanguardists of anti-communism globally, standing next to your guy, and you have the audacity to still consider that it's a genuinely left political event. And one of the things that pisses me off the most is not the younger people being fooled. It's when people try to bring out Lenin, and there was a couple people in my comments that were like trying to cite left-wing communism and Lenin talking about working with the Social Democrats and yada yada yada. Guys, history is important to learn and to understand. Okay. When Lenin is talking about working and voting for Social Democrats, he is speaking about social democratic parties that were a part of the Second International. These were parties that were explicitly Marxist, that just the previous Tuesday, before the fucking break in socialism, the split in socialism that comes with the First World War, the Bolsheviks were a member of the same international organization. So these are like, imagine if the CPUSA or something shows itself to be the yellow party that it is, but it still has some pull and elects like a fucking senator or mayor or something like that. It would be the sort of homologous to that, where like the new communist forces are saying, well, maybe if these old Marxist style parties are running and they can improve things, sure, you can support it in a critical manner. That's not the same as saying the communists should support the social democrats within establishment imperialist parties. A Kautsky is infinitely more radical, infinitely more left than a Zohran and a Bernie Sanders. If these people were to exist back in the day where a lot of their heroes in their minds, like Debs, are from, because he starts his victory speech by citing Debs, Debs would be against them. All of their heroes would be against them because the fundamental premise of all politics, especially for the ones that are from the USA, was breaking with the two capitalist parties. You cannot have a left-wing pro-working class politics within the framework of the two capitalist parties. Now, the communists could say, well, we have to have a certain more tactical relationship to the non-capitalist social democratic parties that collaborate and yada, yada. That's fine. But it's never been support the capitalist party. I beg you, find one quote of Lenin saying that in a in a period after the immediate struggle against Tsardom in the early 1900s, because that's a different issue. Fighting against Tsardom and maybe allying with the liberals when you're trying to bring down the Tsar, that's one thing. After that historical period, when you already have bourgeois democracy formally established, supporting a capitalist party is that moment where you're literally just betraying your principle, and it has nothing to do with communist practice or a smart compromise or anything of that nature.
Yeah, it reminds me when Vaush was pulling out the Lenin and Mao quotes that he like Googled on ChatGPT to try and convince people to vote for Joe Biden, and it was like the worst butchering, and isolating of quotes in order to take them out of context to try and argue in favor of that. There's nothing, in the Marxist canon that suggests you should ally with the Democratic Party, and especially not, like, how much time did Lenin spend railing against reformists, people who were against revolutions, like half of what he talked about. So, and the Zohran guy has condemned revolutionary governments across the world, and he's not calling for a revolution in the United States. So, what do you call that other than the exact kind of reformists that Lenin railed against? Not only that, but I know this is a Fox News article. I'll get to the super chats here in a second, but I know this is a Fox News article, but sometimes CNN publishes things that are true about the Republicans, and sometimes Fox publishes things that are true about the Democrats, even though they're partisan corporate rags. But this article details how Mamdani's transition leader was heavily influenced by the Soros network during the Biden administration. He hired a transition team of all women. So, I guess we can't complain about it too much. Otherwise, we're sexist. All women connected to the Soros network. So we did it, guys. The revolution is here. The DSA revolution is here. We have a transition team of all George Soros's women. So, but at least they are women. Check the super chats here. Thank you, Normal Reserve, for the $10 super chat. Appreciate you. We've been doing really good on the super chats the last couple streams. I know it's probably because I haven't been as consistent, but I appreciate you guys for that. Patreon.com/MidwesternMarks if you don't want 30% of your money taken by YouTube. Patreon only takes 5 in comparison. But our formal liberal democracy is too rigid for reform. Too many opposing interests, liking the term vetocracy more and more for describing our system. You know what? That is actually a good term. It's kind of like checks and balances to ensure that nothing ever improves. Like, that's what they say is the best thing about the American system is the checks and balances, but it's just like endless bureaucracy into infinity to make sure that nothing substantive ever gets done. And that's why the government's been shut down for like 30 some days, and you probably don't even notice a difference in your life unless you're on Snap or something, because the government doesn't do shit. It does the bare minimum. And even programs like SNAP and Medicaid and Medicare, which people tend to approve of, are purposefully cut and made more inefficient by the government, so then they can point to it and say, see, free stuff doesn't work or publicly funded stuff doesn't work. So it really is like I kind of like that word too, vetocracy. We just veto all the good ideas, or they get lost in the bureaucratic maze.
It's like giving people free poop sandwiches and then no one takes it, and you're like, look, no one likes free stuff.
Right.
Therefore, we shouldn't fund it.
I didn't eat my shit sandwich. That'd be a good South Park episode.
It's not untrue. I mean, the bureaucracy is horrendous. I had to deal with even USPS is a little better, but I had to deal with them for like 4 months in order to transition how we shipped their journals, and I would have blown my brains out if it lasted 1 month longer. It was horrendous, horrendous. Worse. There's no way like a bread line in Cuba is worse than
that. Give me the bread line all day.
100%.
I'd rather be a doctor getting paid less than a taxi driver. You know, that's what they do under socialism. My flight to the ACP summit was canceled because the government is dysfunctional. Thanks for the power hour. At least I have my comrades there. Damn, sorry to hear that, Jonathan. Thank you for being a Midwestern Marx member and the $20 super chat. I really appreciate you. You're a great comrade with the ACP. That sucks, man. That really sucks. Wish you could be there. It's that I didn't even know that air traffic controllers were funded by the U.S. government. I didn't know that was a thing. It's just a way of, funneling government funds to the big airline companies, of course, paying their labor costs for them. But
is TSA government funded as well?
What? DSA?
I think
probably.
TSA.
Oh, I don't know. They have to be, right? They can't be private. There's no way. Yeah, there's like an old SNL skit about TSA where they're like, we're the last line of defense in America. Like, if the National Guard goes down, it's us. And it's all these fat TSA members.
Get the scooters out.
Yeah. Pretty funny. Do you know that they've tested the TSA and like 95% of the shit that they try to sneak through gets through? It like doesn't work at all. It's what do they call it? Security theater. It's to make people feel safe after.
It's Bentham's panopticon, where people just need to feel like they're being watched, and then they watch themselves.
Yeah,
it's how I do great. No, I'm not gonna say.
Don't give away how you manipulate your kids. Tell me after so I can do it to my
yeah. Yes.
Cyborg.
Cutting edge pedagogy. That's what it is.
Cyborg, thank you for the 10. Appreciate you. Shouldn't there be a systematic infiltration of the Democratic Party, or like someone who runs it with the real revolutionary plan close to the vest? I mean, why wouldn't you just make your own revolutionary party then? Like if you're a revolutionary who supports bringing the working class to power and taking down Wall Street, why would you look at the existing political parties and be like, I'm going to join the one that supports Wall Street? It's like, no, so join a political party that's actually intended to be revolutionary, a political party that explicitly states that its goal is to bring the working class to political power, which is the American Communist Party. The Democratic Party was never meant to be that, right? Like, we're trying to transform it into a socialist party. It's a puppet of Wall Street. It's a capitalist liberal party, and that's all it's ever been. So why don't we just create and build our own revolutionary party, which is what we're in the process of doing? And yes, it's a long process and seems daunting at first, but it's a hell of a lot easier than transforming a party that's run by people like Obama and Nancy Pelosi into a socialist communist party. I mean, that's an impossible task.
And two things here, like, experience exists for a reason. Let's try to learn from it. What have we seen with all these DSA people that have won seats in the Democratic Party? Has there ever been one time when they have exerted any pressure at all on the Democratic establishment in order to get something to pass that helps working people?
Force the vote.
There's force the vote is the best example. Even the slightest bit of pressure. No, they prefer the careers, the long-term careers that they can have within the Democratic Party. Because as Haas mentioned recently in the interview with the RBN, with Nick from RBN, if they were principled enough to stand on business within the Democratic Party, they would have been principled enough to run outside of the Democratic Party, which is not unheard of. Look at how Bernie won initially. It was as an independent. The other thing is that the moments where a Democratic administration has been forced to do things nominally progressive for working people have been those moments where there have been strong, independent, left-wing and working class organizations. If you think about FDR, there is no federal jobs program. None of the shit FDR did for the American working class would have been anywhere near possible without a strong Communist Party, a strong Socialist Party, and a strong union movement, a strong independent union movement that was not simply tied at the hip to the Democratic Party. Even the civil rights movement, the stuff that was passed by the Democratic Party in that era would not have been possible without a strong civil rights movement that was independent in terms of the two-party system. It was relatively independent in terms of the two-party system, and there was a lot of radical communist elements within it. So the only time that any of these parties have ever been not moved left, but forced to do things that are nominally left-wing has been when there has been an actual strong left-wing sovereign alternative that can force their hand in many ways. And you can't do that from inside.
I mean, since you bring up the history, let's just touch on force the vote again for a second. Remember what this was. All they wanted AOC to do was try to force a vote on Medicare for all. Try to get Congress to vote on whether they should pass Medicare for all, because Nancy Pelosi was against it. And Nancy Pelosi was running for speaker, right? She was running to be the leader of the Democrats in the House. And people like Jimmy Dore told AOC, well, you should tell Pelosi, since you promised us on the campaign trail that you were going to fight, and destroy the corruption within the Democratic Party, and turn it into a real workers' party. So you should tell Nancy Pelosi you're not going to vote for her unless she brings up Medicare for all for a vote. And then if she does, you can vote for her. And this is, basic politics, like extracting a concession out of someone who's supposed to be your opponent. And the squad, the AOC and company, the progressive Democrats, had enough people to swing the election for speaker. So they had the power to bring Medicare for all up for a vote. And this is back when people really genuinely believed AOC was going to fight for the people against the Democrats. And she wouldn't even do that, right? She wouldn't even say, I'm not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi for speaker unless she brings up one policy that I supported on my campaign for a vote. And the reason that she gave was that it would do too much relational harm. I'll never forget that. It would do too much relational damage. Basically meaning, fuck you. I don't care if you donated to my campaign because you thought I was going to fight the Democrats on your behalf. I'm going to buddy up with the Democratic Party elites. And I won't fight for health care if it does relational damage within the Democratic Party establishment. So not only am I going to bust up that establishment, but I'm going to protect it from you, the people. I'm going to defend the establishment and make sure that they don't have to bring healthcare up for a vote. Defending the establishment is more important to me than getting the American people healthcare. So that's the kind of people we're dealing with here. That's what it looks like when these people try to push the Democratic Party left. They end up becoming completely co-opted. And that's an event in American history that I don't think we should forget, because they responded to it by just being like, well, Jimmy Dore, a right-winger, Jimmy Dore, a right-wing grifter, Donald Trump, and it was and then Jimmy Dore sexist towards AOC. They fell back on the most fucking idiotic liberal
Zionist
talking
style.
points. Yeah.
Zionist style reports.
By the way, you want to answer this last one while I'm in the bathroom?
Huge victory for the barista left. I mean, they're treating it as such. The thing about the barista left, if you want to call it that, or the DSA left, is that I think they get off from symbolic victories. They're perfectly fine with very basic symbolic victories. They don't need any substantive thing to be actually accomplished. And that's something that I'm simply deducing from the fact that the same strategies they have applied over the last 10 years have not borne any actual substantive fruit, and they're still going with them. They're still getting pumped when they achieve these symbolic victories. So at some point, you got to ask yourself, do they actually want the things that they claim to be fighting for? Or do they just want the pretense of a victory? If they actually wanted some of the things they would be fighting for, they would at least reflect, hey, this strategy that we have, where a bunch of DSA people get involved in a Democratic Party campaign of someone who has a formal DSA membership, and then over time, instead of moving the party to the left, which I think is completely impossible, Everyone just gets absorbed into the Democratic Party establishment because that becomes their livelihood. They get paid from these campaigns. They become basically DNC employees. Instead of reflecting on that and saying, okay, maybe we need, if we want to push a so-called democratic politics, democratic socialist politics forward, maybe we need our own organization that's sovereign, so independent, autonomous, that has agency, disconnected from the Democratic Party. They've never had that process of reflection. So it forces you to think, well, what is their social function? What are they there to do? And you can't look at how they have worked for the last 10 years and not come out thinking that their social function is to get this dissident left-wing energy, especially in the youth who are being radically discontented and rapidly radicalized against the system, and move them back into the Democratic Party, to get people who want to go away from the establishment and say, look, it's kind of like that scene in Pinocchio where they drag the kids to fucking Epstein Island. Hey, we're going to go do something cool. And then boom, you're back to fucking Epstein Island politics. You're back to the Democratic establishment. And that three things happens to people. Either they say, fuck it, I'm going to sell out on all of my principles and just become a Democrat and part of this establishment. Two, they get disillusioned and they're like, you know what, fuck politics. I'm only going to focus on, the work that I have to do and drinking beers with my buddies and watching sports games. Or three, they join the fucking ACP because there's no other organization. There's no other organization in the country that exists politically sovereign from the Democratic Party and calls itself left besides the American Communist Party. All the other ones, and you saw it at the No Kings protest, who endorsed it? Every single so-called leftist organization in the US. The only one that did not endorse it, the only one that called it out for what it was the American Communist Party. So you can say whatever the fuck you want about the ACP. What you can't say is that we're unprincipled. What you can't say is that we don't fucking stand on business, even when it's not popular, even when it leads to a bunch of idiotic leftists attacking us and saying a bunch of shit in our comment sections, to them defaming us and spreading rumors. We always stand on fucking business. And there's a lot of people who started off hating ACP or being somewhat neutral to it, that in time, because of our consistency, are realizing, man, maybe these cats aren't what I was told they were. Maybe these people are actually principled. They might have their flaws understood from their specific biases, but they actually mean what they say and they say what they mean. Whereas these other people say that they're one thing, but their actions reflect something completely different.
Yeah, I mean, believe us, you guys don't know how bad we wish there was a party that we could have just joined that was already pre-established.
100%.
Like, we never wanted to do it. It was the historical imperative, the fact that America needs a Marxist-Leninist party right now, and someone needed to get the ball rolling on building it. And we just, from talking to you guys on our streams and on our TikToks, we happen to have a community of dedicated Marxist-Leninists together, the largest in the United States, alongside our infrared comrades. So we had to unite those. There was no choice. We would have gladly joined CPUSA, gladly. And we knew that the attacks and smears would come, especially, with the infrared merger, because they were a little bit more controversial than us back in the day. But it's all worth it, and it all needed to be done. Definitely no regrets looking back. But the things that people think about us are just so funny. Like, we're grifters, or we're doing it for money. Like, there's so many easier ways to make money. I mean, this is the opposite of making us money, unless you count the hours of work that Carlos puts into to produce the journal. But I mean, that's earned. That's
Guys,
work going into that.
I'm going to make a very existential and personal point. Do you guys really think I want to stand in front of a fucking camera and do a TikTok once, twice a day to upload it to try to change people's minds? I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. I hate doing video content. I would much prefer just to be sitting down, reading philosophy, writing academic articles on philosophy, than doing the shit we have to do. The problem is no one else is fucking doing it. So someone has to step up and do it. You don't think Haas would much prefer to be writing theory than doing what the fuck is required from the chairman 99.99% of the time? 100%. Haas would be infinitely happier just sitting down writing theory, as I would, than doing any of the shit that we're the fucking supposed to do with the party. But we're forced to do it because no one else was. And at what point do we say, all right, if no one else is doing it, let's give it a shot. Let's try to do it.
Yeah, and Jackson and I could be rich and famous social media influencers, but we choose to repeatedly get banned and suppressed and demonetized and kicked off these platforms because we believe in our principles.
So now you're just poor and famous.
Right, now I'm like Liver King. Before ACP, I was poor and nobody knew who I was. After ACP, I'm still poor. Still got the same audience.
At least your abs are real. Whereas
Yes.
his were like bought in Brazil or something like that.
I don't have ab inserts or implants, thankfully.
By the way, just asking for a friend, where can you buy those? And how much do they cost?
You know what? Ask Dr. Mike Israel, your boy.
I don't know. He got his doctorate from BYU.
That was the rough draft.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Jason Hickel and degrowth? You know, one of Jason Hickel's books, The Divide, was like one of the first political books that I read all the way through, and it was good. It was about the economic divide between the global south and the global north and kind of how it happens. And it went into some interesting concepts that now they seem simple to me, but at the time, like capital fatigue, like the idea of, you know, if you try to, if you're in a small, impoverished country, and you try to take the resources and reinvest them in development, a lot of the rich people who control those resources are just going to dip out. And then there's going to be like a legal battle over the resources. Like we're seeing this with Venezuela, with like the US and the UK trying to tie up their gold and their oil legally and prevent them from using it. So anyways, that was an interesting book. But as far as degrowth, I don't know too much about it. I've never read his book on it, but it seems very Malthusian to me. I think we need sustainable growth is a word that I like to use. That's what the Chinese are doing. And you can industrialize and, give your people electricity and modern things without doing it in a way that's destructive to the environment if you have a planned economy, right? The problem is that capitalism is this anarchic mode of production that just focuses on profit and wealth. So ecological factors can't be taken into account. If you have a planned economy, you can take ecology into account. But that's sustainable growth, not degrowth. And, it's also like, Jason Hickel's either from the US or Europe, I think. And it's like we're living in these industrialized societies and telling Africa and Latin America, like, you don't get to industrialize because it's bad for the environment. But, we're going to continue producing or whatever, or using like 100 times the energy supply or whatever here in the West. So there's like a little bit of chauvinism to the, liberal ecology, I guess, too. So I think Carlos and I are both, if you had to put a label on it, like socialist ecologists or eco-socialists, if you want to call it that, where it's just the answer to ecological degradation isn't to roll back growth and make people's lives worse. It's to do growth sustainably.
Yeah, I wrote a paper on environmental neo-Malthusianism where I critique this idea of degrowth. Look, one of the central reasons why Marxism holds that capitalism is creating the conditions for socialism is because at some point, the relations of production, how it is that we produce in capitalist society, the relations between classes, the imperative of profit, etc., the telos, the goal, the purpose of capital accumulation, and how it subsumes everything under it. That relation of production under capitalism becomes a fetter, an obstacle for the development of the productive forces. So part of how Marxism understands the necessity of socialism, it's not just the class contradictions. It's the contradiction also between the relations and the forces of production. And this is basic Marxism, which means not that socialism is better at producing a bunch of wasteful shit and just having a more hyper industrial system of waste. It means that socialism is able to develop a more efficient way of producing the things that are necessary for society. That's really what abundance referred to as the basic economic premise of an advanced socialist or communist society. It's that you have an efficient way of producing things, of making them much more efficient than capitalism. And let me give you all a very simple example that I know all of you have experienced. These little devices, the iPhones, they're meant to fucking break in 3 years. Now, do you really think that they can't make them so that they last 40 years? My parents used to own this extremely small, like, family business, laundry, that it was worked by my parents and my grandparents when they were still alive. And they never wanted to get rid of the 1960s washing machines because those were the ones that just kept on fucking going. And all the other laundries that were buying new machines, in 3, 4, 5 years, they needed new ones. Because
I had a
shit is
laundry.
new.
I
Yeah,
had a washer and dryer mechanic, a guy who came in to fix up our washer and dryer, tell me that the old ones would last for 40 years and now they're built to break. The
and
guy who
it's the
worked on them for a
same.
living.
It's the same with everything, dog, because the goal is to get you back in the store to buy some other shit so that they keep making fucking profit. That is a fetter and obstacle to the development of technology, of the forces of production. Because why not make shit that lasts a million years? I was in Venezuela next to an African delegation watching Maduro like sing during the campaign and shit. I mean, I looked to the left, and these African delegates were like with a phone. They were zooming into Maduro's face as if we were 5 feet away from him, and it looked like the portrait mode on the iPhone. It was perfect. And then I look at my iPhone and I'm zooming in, and it looks like I have a toaster in my hand, and the image is horrible. And it's like, well, what the fuck? And I asked them, yo, what phone is that? And they're like, oh, it's Huawei. You can do that shit when you're in China, and when the purpose of production is use value, is meeting people's needs, making shit better and not just profit.
And Lenin actually talks about, it's been so long since I've read Imperialism, not that long, but I can't think of the exact quote, but he basically says, with the rise of monopolies and capitalism's transition into the monopoly stage, you have the possibility for basically planned obsolescence. I can't remember exactly how he says it, but basically you have the possibility of capitalists, because they control the whole market, designing their products to break more easily, which actually, I remember when these came out with the dongle, when Apple stopped putting a headphone jack in here, and now you had to buy a little toy to plug in. I'm like, what, are we going in reverse? Is technology really going backwards? And it is, because then you have to buy a dongle. So it's less efficient, it's more expensive, it's completely worthless, it's making everyone's life harder. Nobody can keep track of those little stupid ass things. I have like 100 of them and I can't keep track of them. And it's, all to make money, because Apple knows that they have a monopoly, or at least a relative monopoly, on the phone market. Them and Android. So it's and all of that is a fetter caused by the relations of production. And this is why, like, I still believe socialism, unless the world, unless humanity goes extinct, it's inevitable. Because even as, as anti-communist as Americans are right now, ideologically, with all the Red Scare propaganda and stuff, there's only so long that you can go on with such a stupid, backwards, and inefficient system. There's only so long you can go on buying dongles before you say, why the fuck don't you just put a headphone jack in it? And that should eventually lead you to, why don't we have socialism? And that's why we produce so many TikToks and streams and articles and stuff about the inefficiencies of capitalism, and trying to help people draw these conclusions and make these connections in their head, because it is just reality. This system, these relations of production, are outdated. They've completely outlived their purpose, and the economy is already basically planned by the bourgeoisie. We just need one that's planned for the working class.
The dongle is a more efficient mechanism of terror than anything you can find during Stalin's reign. It's
clip it, boys. Lucas, clip that shit. Just no context. It'll be like,
I was thinking about that for like 5 minutes. It's gonna be like the DPRK one that like once.
Yes. Exactly. That's what, dude. Those guys are so good at it. The Midwestern Marx media team guys are like, we'll say something in stream where we're like, oh, I don't know if I should have said that. It's a little edgy, and then it's a clip the next day because they're like, this will blow up. It's controversial.
I love the comments of that video because it reached normies somehow, and they're like, "What the fuck is my algorithm doing?" I'm just dressed like a coke dealer in Miami in the '80s, and I'm like, the DPRK is the freest country in the whole planet. I'd say this to the New York Times if I had the chance to.
That's great, dude. North Korea is like, I've talked about this before, but it's like they've demonized it so much, and the DPRK is so like closed off that we don't have much access to actually what's going on there unless you're like a communist looking for movies. Like my brothers and sisters in the North, which had an ACP movie night of that movie the other night in Illinois. But anyways, great film. But it's almost like worked in reverse, where people now are like interested about the DPRK because they feel like they don't know anything about it and it's so mysterious. Like all my videos defending the DPRK tend to blow up. Usually I'm like try to be more nuanced, than just saying the DPRK is the freest country on earth to make normies comment and blow it up in the algorithm. Maybe
I did it in Spanish. I did it in Spanish, and it blew up as well.
Really?
There was a bunch of Cusanos in the comments like, "Why don't you move there?" And I would just spam reply like, "I am in North Korea right now. That's where I live."
That's awesome. Super chat here from Sumaya. Can you please do a detailed video on Indian socialist history, not only Kerala, West Bengal, Tripura, also socialist state ones? Yeah, I did. If you check my TikTok series, it's a playlist called The Politics of Every Country, or The Politics of All Countries, which I need to continue, by the way. I haven't done an episode in a while. I'm on Europe now. But I went through India and Bengal and talked about that a little bit, not as in-depth probably as you're asking for. But I did talk about that a little bit. It's a very fascinating history, very sad history, as is the case where in most places where socialism was crushed. But yeah, maybe at some point I can do a full video on that for sure. Thank you for the super chat. I don't know
The
if I've ever
independent
gotten
movement
that.
in India, I cite this, I think, I forget in what, it might be in my dissertation. That's going to be a book soon. But Nehru was extremely inspired by the Bolshevik Revolution. A lot of the Indian anti-colonial leaders, they were very much inspired by Soviet Russia. And just like the Mexicans, like Zapata, at the turn of the century, Zapata famously said, "If what they're doing is Bolshevism, I'm a Bolshevik." And there was a similar attitude. Nehru, when he visited the Soviet Union, he's like, "Look, these people were in conditions very similar to ours, feudal, like semi-feudal conditions. And look at what they have built. This is something that we need to learn from here in India."
Which was it? Nehru who there was some leader in the non-aligned movement who like Che and Fidel went to go visit, and Che was like, "You guys are living in too much luxury. Politicians shouldn't live like this," and was like criticizing them, and they were pissed. And Fidel was like, "Chill." And he's like, "No, it's true. They shouldn't."
That was in one of the Soviet states. It was in Eastern
you're
Europe. I forget
right.
which one. Yeah.
Criticize them for living in too much luxury. So based.
There's a Russian historian. I don't know if he's still alive, but Cuban channels on YouTube, like pro-communist channels, have shared this interview that he did. Now he's like super right-wing, but before he was the guy that would translate for Fidel to the Russians. So he was like this with Fidel. And he talked about the experience of Fidel going to the Soviet Union under Khrushchev. And they took him just to the places that they wanted him to see. And then he had a meeting with Khrushchev right at the end of it. And I mean, it's insane what this guy says. He's like, instead of just like being thankful that Khrushchev took him around, he sat there and he lambasted Khrushchev for not showing him the parts of stuff that were not working correctly, for not fucking, for not, he criticized those things that he was able to see. He was just extremely critical to their face. Like, this is all the shit that I think is fucked up from just the last few days that I've been here. And this guy was in the middle of it, having to translate to Khrushchev in Russian and then translate back. And Fidel, like a Chad, just like stood there and said, I don't care where you're at geopolitically. Here's the shit you're doing wrong.
That's awesome. It was, by the way, it was Khrushchev who Che criticized, but it was Nkrumah and Nasser who he like. It was Nasser was the one I was thinking of, where he was there and said to their face, like, "How can you live like this while your people live in poverty?" And Fidel was like, "Yo, these are our friends." And Che's like, "Well, friends still friends when they're fucking up."
Che was a real one.
Who was? Sasser, Eddie, I really wish you would debate Vouch again. Yeah, maybe I don't pay attention to the guy anymore. I feel like he died after the. I would like to say that it was my debate with him that killed him, but I think it was the horse porn. Really was the nail in the Vouch coffin.
That was such a Norm Macdonald build statement.
I think it was the horse.
When he's in the car with Seinfeld and he's like, some people say the worst part about Bill Cosby was the hypocrisy. I'd say it was the great.
That's so funny. Yeah, Vouch. My DPRK back and forth with Vouch was really good too. The Ukraine war debate was great. But the back and forth on the DPRK was even better. So I don't know. He's just not that popular anymore. I guess I feel like I don't see him anymore. But yeah, any other like fake leftist neolibs that you want me to destroy, send them my way. I'll debate any of them. I'm trying to get the straight white dudes for Kamala, like Dean Withers and Harry Sisson and them. I'm trying to get them on for a debate, but they're scared. They don't want this.
That's too black of a name for a white kid to have.
Dean?
That's
Withers?
Way too black of a name. That's like Dean Withers. Oh my God. You should be playing jazz and the blues.
That's what I thought. Sitting on the dock of the bay. So should we talk for a little bit about why I hate Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Just be careful with the last name.
Yeah. Let's call him Arnold. How about that?
Call him Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Arnold. So the more I've learned about, like, Carlos was probably into bodybuilding before I was, in terms of like following it and knowing who these guys were. But, I've retired from wrestling recently, competitive wrestling. I've been lifting like crazy because it's fun and I need something to do. So, of course, because I have a hyper obsessive brain, I've gotten into the history of bodybuilding and learning from all these bodybuilders. And I tell you what, the more you learn about Arnold, the less that you will like the guy. There was a lot of fuckery and politics going on in the bodybuilding sphere. And it makes perfect sense to me that Arnold went into politics after he was in bodybuilding. But did he ever, before I get into the 90 or the 80 and 81 Olympia, did Arnold ever screw over Oliva, the Cuban? Because there was a Cuban guy who was the dominant Olympia champion before Arnold. And then Arnold kind of came in and won in like his rookie year or whatever.
Yeah, Sergio Oliva was prevented from competing for like 3 years of his prime. That would have been years that he would have broken Arnold's streak. He was prevented from doing that because he had competed in some other competition that was like sanctioned by the Mr. Olympia. But it was all based on politics. It was the fact that Sergio Oliva was Cuban, and it was in the mixture of that Cold War hysteria that he gets basically sanctioned off of the Mr. Olympia. And if you compare Sergio Oliva's body with pretty much anyone, I mean, it's hard. Look at the waist. The waist is so incredibly snatched. It's just an insane build. One of the best builds I think I've ever seen.
Absolutely. So that's sketchy right there, in and of itself. And you got to remember that like Arnold's movie from 1977, I think, Pumping Iron, basically blew up the sport of bodybuilding and made it as popular as it is. So he became a celebrity within the bodybuilding sphere. And it was kind of like Conor McGregor today within the UFC, where he was almost like running the company and he could do whatever he wanted. And he became like best friends over this period when he was winning all of his Olympia titles with a lot of the judges and Joe Weider, the guy who owned the IFBB, the league that they all compete in. So over the years, he becomes the star of bodybuilding and friends with the judges and the owners. And eventually, after he wins, I believe his fifth Olympia, he retires and goes to do movies, and he starts shooting movies. But in 1980, at the last minute, he announces that he's going to be making a comeback. And he'll only have 8 weeks to train for the Olympia, but he's going to do his best and just show up. So he shows up at the 1980 Olympia looking worse than he ever has. His conditioning wasn't there. He was flat. His muscles were not on par with these people who had been training nonstop for the Olympia competition while Arnold had been shooting movies. One of those people being Mike Mentzner, who had an absolutely absurd physique. Mike Mentzner's the GOAT. We all love him. This is Mike Mentzer. Right here. Absolute beast. Got him with Mike Israel.
I'm bigger and stronger than Mike Mentzer.
This guy on the right recently said that he was bigger and stronger than Mike Mentzner, and now everyone's clowning on him. But anyways, Mike Mentzner looked like this. Arnold looked worse than he ever had. Most people, including the audience who was there at the arena, believed that Mike Mentzer won. But guess who the title went to? It was Arnold, because the judges were his best friends. So they basically robbed this guy. Now, Mike Mentzer was the Aristotelian, ancient Greek, warrior intellectual. The dude was a genius. He invented, and Arnold didn't like him because he invented a training philosophy that was contrary to Arnold's. He said, you only need to train 3 times a week so you can give your body enough rest. But when you do train, you need to go insanely hard and really shock those muscles. But then you need to give them time to recover. And it was different than Arnold's strategy, but it worked for him. And most famously for Dorian Yates, who would train under Mentzner's system and go on to win 6 Olympias in the 90s when bodybuilding was really at its peak. And you just had these giant mass monsters up there. So anyways, they rig the Olympia against Mike Mentzer, and then he boycotts along with other bodybuilders. I believe Chris Cormier, and there were some other famous ones who were among the boycott. Chris Dickerson, maybe. No, he ended up competing at the last minute, but he was going to boycott. So anyways, Mike Mentzer is the kind of guy who not only has strong beliefs and strong morals, but he was willing to fight for them and speak up for them. And he believed that bodybuilding was, people were telling him bodybuilding subjective. And he's saying, no, there are objective criteria for what makes a successful bodybuilder. And I beat Arnold, but they just said it's subjective and gave it to their friend. So him and some of the others boycott the 1981 Olympia. Now, the 1981 Olympia might be even worse because Arnold's finally retired now. Whoops, I just searched 1981. But his best friend...
This is such a good comment, by the way. Mike Mentzer's workout plan was 5-year plans.
So true.
Stalinist 5-year plans in working out. Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
No, you're good. They're good. So the next year, all these athletes are boycotting, but another GOAT of bodybuilding, Tom Platz, is not boycotting. He's still in the competition, as well as some other guy, Victor, something, I can't think of his name. But so Arnold's not competing, but his best friend, Franco Columbu, Arnold's best friend, is competing. But he showed up with gynecomastia, which is what happens when you mess up your steroid ratios and you grow women's breasts. He had a women's boob on stage. So normally, this would basically disqualify you from winning the Olympia. You can't win the Olympia if you have gynecomastia. It's just, it's you have a women's boob against these guys who have perfect bodies. But once again, above Tom Platz, one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, Arnold's buddy ends up winning the title. So they end up giving the Olympia title to Arnold's best friend, who absolutely didn't deserve it, probably deserved it even less than Arnold did the year before, because the whole thing was essentially rigged. And I love Tom Platz, but my one beef with him is that he doesn't speak out about this, whereas Mentzer was extremely vocal. He saw the sport that he loved being corrupted and ruined, and being unfair, and he spoke out about it. Tom Platz was basically like, oh yeah, well, they stole it from me. What can you do?
And Platz describes what Mentzer did as just him crashing out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't like that. It rubs me the wrong way, the way he describes it in that conversation with Dorian. I love Tom Platz, but that's my one big issue, is that he just kind of let this injustice go, whereas Mentzer called it out, and really it kind of drove Mentzer crazy that other people weren't thinking the same way he did. Like people like Tom Platz, like, how are you okay with this? You know, it's sort of like the intellectual's curse, where if you know too much about the world, and you're someone who's morally upright and you're willing to fight for what you believe in, it can be really frustrating. Because other people are just kind of like sheep. No offense to Tom Platz, but they kind of just go along with it and shrug their shoulders. And Metzner wasn't willing to do that, and it kind of drove him crazy. In a way, he never really got over being robbed of the Olympia by Arnold in 1980. But not only did Arnold do that, there's another story. Tom Platz, the guy who won't speak out against Arnold, tore his bicep before a competition. And he was doing a really good job of hiding it from the judges. You could barely see that his bicep was torn. But he had told Arnold before the competition that he had a torn bicep. And guess who went and told the judges? Arnold. So he snitched on Tom Platz, this guy who's been nothing but nice to him, in order to prevent him from winning the competition. Then the judges saw his torn bicep and asked him to show it to them so they could inspect it or whatever because of Arnold. So this guy is just an absolute snitch, someone who played politics to keep himself at the top of bodybuilding, someone with a huge ego who couldn't handle his philosophies being challenged by someone who was intellectually superior in Mike Metzer. And of course, Arnold then goes on to become a politician in America, basically like a fascist state. So I know his dad was a Nazi, so that would probably hurt him to hear that he basically served a fascistic imperialist state, but that's what it is. You know, he was perfect for that world, corrupt, all about his own self-image and his own ego. And then when he was in office, of course, this is just funny. He cheated on his wife, who is like a beautiful supermodel, with the housekeeper, who is this lady. So there's that. Do with that information what you will.
I thought that was only a Democrat thing.
This is his wife, and this is his mistress. So great guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Never meet your heroes, right?
I got one more for you. Oh man, it's not letting me share it. He's a good friend of Bibi. Good friend of Bibi Netanyahu.
Really?
And super extremely pro-Israel. Yeah. Look up Arnold and Bibi Netanyahu and you'll see 3 million pictures of them. Very big fan of Israel.
Well, that tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? And he became a Zionist, so let me find it here. Yep, you're right.
I mean, even the films, a lot of the films that they were doing, that him and Stallone, deeply anti-communist. They were like archetypical Cold War films. Hoorah, hoorah! The Americans are the good guys. These fucking jungle people are the bad guys, and it like that. Those were the spaces that Arnold occupied.
Absolutely. And now that I look at pictures of him and Oliva next to each other, I don't even.
It's not even close.
It's not even close, dude. It's not. Like, I know, even if you aren't a big bodybuilding person in the audience, does this look close? Look at his fucking arms.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't even think Arnold was that good of a bodybuilder compared to some, especially the guys who came later, but even Oliva.
What Arnold had was chest. Arnold had a nice chest, but that's it. Wide chest, big wide chest.
Bone structure too. Yeah, mm-hmm. A lot of that's just like he was born with it. Yeah, Oliva totally had him beat.
But this is what we mean when people talk about capitalism is markets. Yeah. Capitalism is private capital. No, motherfucker. Capitalism is subjecting everything to the logic of capital accumulation, to profit. If a dude is profitable because he's making movies, he's bringing people into bodybuilding, I don't give a fuck if he's got gyno. I don't care if he's 3 times worse than Mike Mentzer. I'm going to make him the fucking Mr. Olympia. It's that simple. And guess what? Everything else in society works like that. You think boxing is objective? You think the matches made with boxing are objective? You know how many Cubans have been in every single weight class capable of winning and beating everyone, but they don't get the fights? Because what fucking purchasing power parity that the Cubans have when it comes to boxing? None. It's not popular to have a Cuban champion because they're not going to make you money. They're not big pay-per-view fights. You get a Mexican boxer, you throw him in there, he actually fights. You get a Cuban one and he boxes. He does this thing that's called not getting fucking hit, and that's not very sexy. People want to see the two guys go at it and punch and punch and punch and get destroyed like if it was a fucking Rocky movie. But the Cubans are actual boxers. They have technique and they don't get hit. And that's not sexy to watch. That doesn't sell pay-per-view. And so you'll never get Cubans that are given the opportunity to have those matches. And we had some of the best boxers, Rigon Diao, and complete animals, people that were undefeated in the Olympics, hundreds of fights, undefeated. No one beat them. People that beat champions in sparring matches over and over and over and over again. But you don't hear about them because they don't sell. And that is capitalism. It affects every sphere of society. It's what sells. Nothing could be worse. I forget if it was Veblen or I forget which who said this at the turn of the last century. Nothing could be considered more heinous in the modern capitalist world than saying that something is not profitable. And that's the essence of capitalism. Everything has to be subsumed under the bottom line of profit and capital accumulation. It affects sports, it affects everything.
And I see it all the time. I complain about it all the time, especially on my martial arts channel. Just recently, I've gotten into bodybuilding, but I complain about it all the time with wrestling and with the UFC. Everybody, and everybody knows this. It's not just the Marxist UFC fans, of which there aren't that many yet. But it's everybody who's saying since the UFC got bought out by corporate shareholders, this shareholder group called WME-IMG, who also owns the WWE, it's basically turned into sports entertainment where you have, deserving title contenders who are being skipped over by fighters who sell more pay-per-views because they're willing to go out and brawl and get brain damage for our entertainment rather than actually, trying to not get hit, as Carlos said, which is the name of the game in fighting, hit and don't get hit. But they would, the fights where people are getting bludgeoned in the face sell better. So those guys are able to jump the line and get title fights. And it's money manipulating or making the sport perverse. It's money being prioritized above the integrity of the sport. And for me as an athlete, sports are something that are sacred, really. I mean, that might be hyperbole, but it's this deeply human activity where we can compete with each other in a healthy way. And we can get fiery during that competition, but we can come together afterwards. It doesn't have to tear us apart. It's a deeply human thing. There's a reason the Olympics are a thing and all these countries around the world compete, because it's deeply human to compete in sports. And those sacred sports, which are supposed to be based on skill and athleticism and work ethic, are now being infected by money. And it's all about money and who can sell the most tickets and put the most butts in seats. It's basically WWE, sports entertainment. CM Punk one time, who was a famous WWE wrestler, told my friend that all pro sports are fake nowadays, or at least rigged on some level. And the UFC is now being investigated by the FBI, which will probably get swept under the rug by Trump and the DOJ because they're friends with Dana White. But they're being invested for fixing an estimated 100 fights. It's like, it's not necessarily the UFC doing it from the top down. It's fighters who say, everybody bet on my opponent and I'll throw this fight and then give me some of the money. That's how because they're being paid so little. But all of this is an example of how money pervades sports and infects it, and money becomes prioritized above the sport itself and the skill that the sport is actually supposed to be about displaying and competing against each other with. I complained about it the other day with wrestling. I was at this tournament, this youth wrestling tournament, and it's 5 days long. And I'm like, who the shit? I mean, that might not sound super ridiculous if you don't know anything about wrestling, but I'm like, who the shit has 5 days to leave work and leave home? I had all these parents who couldn't come watch their kids because it was in the middle of the freaking week. Who has that much time to go watch their kids? But the reason they made it 5 days, so they could set up a big gear store and sell people a bunch of overpriced gear as they were walking into the tournament. They had the biggest gear store I've ever seen there while they trapped us there for 5 days. So again, it's just money being prioritized above what would be rational for humans, for humanity. And it's so stupid you're so frustrating sometimes to see in every aspect of life when you're like, really, I got to be stuck here for 5 days so the corrupt jackasses at USA Wrestling can make a little bit more money off me, when I'm already struggling. Like,
it was the same thing with baseball. I played up to high school before I got hurt at the highest possible level. I've played with a number of people that are in the major leagues right now. If you've heard the name Nestor Cortez, he was like the second or third starting pitcher for the Yankees as of recently. I haven't followed baseball in a long time, but I've played with him. I've played with many people in major leagues. The best people I ever played with were not the ones who made it, just because they didn't have the resources to go to the perfect game tournaments.
Pay to
It
win.
cost $700. And if you're a working class family in 2014, 15, 13, $700 is a whole lot of fucking money, especially when you have to travel, you have to get hotels that adds another, I don't know, 500 to $1,000. Between everything, it was all about, well, if you came from a middle class background with money, you have these opportunities, you can get coaches. If not, fuck it. You're forced to not ever be seen. And so the best players that I ever played with, they're not the ones who made it. The ones who made it were the ones that came from money.
A conservative kid told me that the other day about wrestling. He said it's basically pay to win at this point, especially if your parents can afford to send you internationally to go train with the Russians. Like the level of advantage that gives you, that strictly stems from money. I mean, yes, it's hard work. You have to go there, but it's your parents' money that sends you there. And I mean, even pro baseball, look at who won the World Series this year. There's no salary cap in baseball. So the Dodgers have like 4 or 5 of the best players in the entire MLB on one team. And there are other teams who, they have what the Dodgers pay for one player for their whole team. And they're these small market teams, they call them. It's like, well, how the hell is that fair? Like, you got to have some kind of salary cap like they do at the NFL to limit how much money these teams can spend, or they'll just buy an all-star team. I mean, same thing in the NBA ever since the Wade, Bosch, LeBron merger. I guess the Celtics were the first to do that with KG and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen.
And the thing is that the strategies and tactics that then the smaller teams with less capital use to get ahead. Like, remember the Moneyball movie? Mm-hmm. The A's, when they didn't have money, like they revolutionized the sport of baseball, because before it's like you're looking at batting average, home runs, and RBIs. But now you have the system of WAR where you can judge very comprehensively players, and it's not obvious anymore. A dude could be hitting 280, 25 home runs, 80 RBIs, but there's a guy who's doing much worse on those numbers, but who's actually a much more positive force for the team, and that you can get infinitely cheaper. And the A's almost, on the basis of those metrics, the A's that had a very low capital for that years had a bunch of players that seemed like they were just shit. Or washed out. They were able to do very, very good because of this ingenuity that came about because of necessity. They didn't have the resources that other big teams have, but now everyone has it. And so the big teams not only have a fuckload of money, but they also have these things that were developed by small teams out of necessity in order to try to get a fighting chance of winning.
Yeah, and WAR is like the stat in baseball now. It used to be, people don't even talk about average anymore, which is kind of weird for me, because growing up, that was all they talked about was batting average. Now it's WAR, and even on base percentage gets more talk than, because if you take walks, that helps your team win. But anyways, thank you for another super chat. This is the first time we've ever gotten Indian rupees in the super chat, so thank you, comrade. Haas, I don't understand Haas. He says the Taliban is communist. Yeah, sometimes Haas just says things, to be funny, or says things that are hyperbole. He says things with comedic effect. He doesn't strictly mean that the Taliban is a Marxist-Leninist communist party. What he's saying is that with the U.S. out of Afghanistan, they have sovereignty. They actually have their own government, which, the Taliban was in power before the U.S. went in, and the Taliban was still in power afterwards. So what he's saying is, you have to let them govern themselves and figure it out for themselves. And, at first they had a Marxist democratic, Soviet-aligned government in power before the U.S. backed the Mujahideen and all these terrorists to overthrow them. And the Taliban is, what was established after that extremely chaotic period. So really all he's saying is that it's better than U.S. occupation, them being a neo-colony. They're establishing sovereignty, and if the Taliban actually has a connection to the people, then they'll start implementing socialist policies anyway, socialist economic policies, because that's what uplifts the people in their country. He's not saying like ideologically they're communist. I see how that could get lost in translation, especially if English isn't your first language.
Yeah. I mean, that's like AIDS Group. AIDS Group
Yeah.
got funded by, we know who they got funded by, in order to oppose, the more Marxist elements of the Palestinian resistance. But when they become the hegemonic form that the resistance takes, at some point, the sheer necessity of having to serve the people and represent them makes them an objectively anti-imperialist or even communistic force. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Justin says the most successful D1 athlete. I know Justin was a football player, I believe. Most successful D1 athlete from my high school's history. Had absolutely loaded parents. He had state-of-the-art weight room in his basement. I think he was a national champion. Yeah, I could tell you a million stories of guys like that, especially, like I said, the kids whose parents could send them internationally. Like, dude, if you're going to train with the Russians, if you're literally going to Dagestan 2-3 years to forget, like, you're going to get good. You're good. It's impossible to be bad when you come back from that, especially if it's when you're young and your brain is still developing. Corvid Conquest with the new username, the new screen name. Thank you, comrade, for being a member for 12 months, 1 year anniversary. Let's go. Shout out to Corvid, 1 year supporting Midwestern Marks financially. Appreciate you so much, brother. Saw some people speaking ill of ACP. Apparently, according to our haters, we're simultaneously Nazbol and libertarian. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, those genuinely curious see our work and join us. Absolutely. Those who engage in good faith end up either supporting us, like our comrades at RBN, or they end up completely joining the party and getting involved with us like so many others. And yeah, I mean, these people don't even know what words mean. It's like Carlos says, there's really is a crisis of argumentation and comprehension in this country, where people like have a hard time understanding objective reality and like understanding arguments. So they just like, they hear words and it's like all based on vibe. It's very hard to explain. It's like they see us not waving, trans flags everywhere, and they're like fascist, Nazbol, libertarian. These words just pop into their head that they're like, that's fascist coded. I guess that would be the word. They think it's fascist coded, and they don't even know what these words mean. They know nothing about the Nazbol party. Haas could tell you more about the actual history of the Nazbol party and where we disagree with them specifically than any of these people calling us Nazbols. But yeah, it's like vibes based arguments that are really, it's tragic to see some young Americans in our country really like try to make an argument, even when we're like challenging them, like, please explain how the ACP is fascist when we do TikTok debates, and their brains just don't work right. Unfortunately, that's why we need everybody reading and, trying to get offline sometimes and do things that are good for your mind, like reading books and feeding your brain good stuff, because we really are dumbed down as a society in general.
Yeah, and at least before there was an incentive with schooling or something to at least develop memory capacities, at least try to do something that's proto thinking, because in school you don't really get taught to think. You just get like taught to remember shit. But now with like Chat GPT and AI, people are outsourcing. They're exporting any sense of thinking onto these systems, and it's extremely sad to see. I sit in front of a class. I'm going to be open about it. Like the more white classes I have where like I know people know what the fuck AI is and shit, I ask them questions and these are the replies that I get. I'll flesh out an argument for them and the conclusion would be very, very, very clear. And these are the replies. And then I have like my classes in the more historically black college I teach at. And the students, I know they're not like fucking on ChatGPT 24/7. I ask them questions and it's like a chorus of all my students answering, because at least they can fucking think. They're not exporting all of their thinking onto these devices. And it's very sad. And I'm not a doomer when it comes to AI. I think these are good tools, especially if you already have a foundation. They're not bad tools. We're not fucking Luddites. But it's sad. There's an epidemic of stupidification in our population, and it's very sad.
My dad's noticing it too, unfortunately. And I say that because Carlos is much younger, obviously. My dad's been in education his entire life. And the difference, especially after COVID. What's up, Nick? Nick and North Star in the chat. Make sure to subscribe to RBN and North Star Radio. If you haven't yet. I'm sure most of our fans already have. But yeah, my dad's been in education his whole life, and he's like, after COVID, things got a lot different. The kids got used to being home. They got completely addicted to their devices. Their attention spans are shot. And this was he was already noticing this when all the liberals were like, there's nothing, there's no side effects of lockdowns and masks. If you say that there are, you're a freaking science denier. You couldn't give any kind of pushback on COVID back then without getting called a science denier. But it really did. It accelerated the stupidification. And I know that a lot of people are noticing this because I made a video on it the other day that I didn't think would blow up, and it blew the fuck up. It was Dean Withers debating some right-wing e-girl, and she was trying to talk to him, and she couldn't it's like she didn't know what an argument was. She didn't know how to make a point and then bring up evidence to back up that point. She was just doing the vibes thing. It was, well, I don't know, literally, whatever. And I'm like, these people are considered political commentators in America. These are supposed to be the smart kids, talking about politics, and they don't even know what the most basic, logic of argumentation is. They don't know how to make an argument. They don't know how to make a point and then cite evidence to back up that point. It's that's the most basic shit, man. It's not good. And that video blew up. People were like, yeah, this is bad. Kids are dumb these days. I don't know what to say. I made a video shitting on boomers recently too, though. They all get my wrath.
Boomers are not unaffected by it. Boomers, they have this hubris by the fact that they're old. They think they're above it, and some of them will be the most terminally online people you'll ever fucking meet. My grandma's on TikTok 12 hours a day. It's like it's like an early industrial capitalism shift. Just watching a bunch of meme and Turkish men.
It's just Haas and Hassan with hammered, shirtless.
She shows me her crush, and it's like a picture of Haas. I'm like, what is this? What's going on? Grandma, not Haas. But it's and we can have the approach that C.S. Peirce called the ostrich in the sand approach, where the ostrich just sticks its fucking head in the sand and just ignores what's going on. We can say, you know what, we're going to wait until everyone learns how to make an argument and becomes rational. Or we can realize, well, people are receiving information and coping in the world in a way that's much less rational, much less argumentative in terms of developing things with a conceptual form, and much more intuitive. And if we're going to succeed in winning them over, you think 9 times out of 10 an argument is going to work, a good argument is going to work? No, a lot of what's going to do the winning of people over is going to be the same vibes way in which they interact with the world. So there's this good comment that Zizek makes that I know a lot of people are going to be like, that's kind of anti-communist, but he cites a novel, and in the novel, one of the characters who's a communist tells the other one, you're not a communist because you understand Marx. You understand Marx because you're a communist. And the point is that at a very basic primordial level, you have to have the belief before you can then think of the reasons as authoritative. And I think we really have to take that seriously. We have to win people at the level of vibes, at the level of memes, at the level, at a much more primordial and intuitive level. And on that basis, then we can educate them. But try to, what does a standard libertarian do in the face of objectively correct Marxist arguments? I don't fuck with it. I don't consider it authoritative. That'll be their reactions 9 times out of 10. You have to win people over with something that's pre-argumentative, and then you give them arguments. Unless they're one of these people that are the exception, those that are actually able to be convinced by argument. But they're at that level because they've already had an opening before that. A receptivity that they're open to with these arguments. So I think we really have to take that into consideration. If we're not trying to reach people at a vibes level first, we're going to miss.
A big problem that I noticed early on in my development politically was that sometimes Marxists quote way too many books. Like when they're first talking to someone, they're like, well, Dorothy Day said this and so said that. And for a normal person, it's like, well, I don't know any of those people or have any reason to trust them. Right. So it's you do have to meet people at the level of vibes, which is, partially what we do on TikTok and why we're on all of these, vibe based platforms. And then once we get them into the party, like then we can help them develop intellectually and learn to consider different arguments and learn basic intellectual skills. I mean, I used to completely separate like my wrestling philosophy and my philosophy for living a good life from politics. Like there are two completely different things. But now that we have the party, I recognize like, no, these life skills like work ethic and stoicism to some degree, although I have criticisms of the stoic school. So a lot of the stuff they hit on was really good. Discipline, spending your time wisely, like feeding your brain good stuff, reading, just living a good life. Like these are super important for us and other party members. Developing basic intellectual skills, developing social skills, like these seem like just basic life things, but they are political, especially when you have a party. And then you read Mao and Lenin, they talked about stuff like this. Mao and Zhou Enlai would give like principles for living a good life, that involved like reading and exercising and going outside, making sure that you're not just staying inside all the time. So yeah, we're developing human material, I guess, human capital, as Diego Rosarin would jokingly say. By the way, did you guys know this is Haz's dad?
Guys, this is an inside joke. I had a dream one time that I was at Haz's crib and he introduced me to his dad, and it was Nasser. I was like, what the fuck is this?
That's so funny. It would make sense too. Nasser is the intellectual. He had like an engineering degree.
But the thing was, when I told Eddie, I mentioned bodybuilding and Nasser, and he thought it was Nasser from Egypt, the like Egyptian leader, but like just built like a bodybuilder.
Like, so wait, Nasser was a bodybuilder in the dream? I didn't know Nasser at the time.
It was so funny.
No disrespect to the real Mr. Aldine, of course. This is the funny joke. Salute. Who is actually a real badass. More so than any bodybuilder. So shout out. Nazbol, no. Hazbol, yes. Exactly. I salute the Hazbol, not the Nazbol. Thank you so much for $10. Although the history of the Nazbol party is actually pretty interesting. Now, of course, we disagree with a lot of it, but it was very much a product of the time period in Russia. And, we often talk about how the 90s was like a crazy time for Russia. Of course, like how do you cope with that? The collapse of the socialist dream and the takeover of by capitalism. Like where do you go from there? And that's where you get interesting thinkers like Dugin, and some of these guys who try to go a little bit of a different direction. And I think, the Soviet bureaucracy and the party did become stagnant and ultimately lead to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So there's a lot to learn even from non-communist thinkers like Dugin, who tried to, put the pieces together after all of that craziness that happened. So, and the Nazbol party is a product of that sort of time period as well. So it is interesting to study, but no, we are not Nazbols.
The way that I understand it from the conversations with Haz, it seems like at the time period, because the people that were calling themselves communists were so liberal-pilled, the Nazbols' whole foundation was just illiberalism. Edgy. And that's why they tried, edgy illiberalism. It was almost like it was the Soviet version of the hippies, right? Except they were trying to be illiberal because liberal had been what was now cool. And everyone was liberal, either the people that were formerly liberal and the people that called themselves communists. So they looked back at the two things that they saw as illiberal, which were the Nazis and the communists, and they tried to synthesize that. Now, in reality, the Nazis were liberals, and the only real illiberal, in the sense of liberal meaning that philosophy and worldview that's intimately tied to the development of capitalism. The only thing that's actually been illiberal has been the communist. It was a failure. But yeah, people don't get that background. As you were saying, it was like a very specific Russian thing. And to say that anyone in the West and in the context of not a post-Soviet state can be a Nazbol is ridiculous. It's like some of the people online that are like white guys from Missouri or something saying that they follow Jucha. So get the fuck out of here. Really? Korean Marxism, Leninism with Korean characteristics, that's where you're going for? I mean, I love the DPRK. It's the freest country on the world, as I repeatedly say.
Right.
And I'm there right now. This is where I live. But you're gonna follow Jucha? That's gonna be your thing if you're an American dude?
Korean nationalism in Missouri. That's what we need. You need socialism with Singham-Rhee characteristics in America. No, for sure. It is ridiculous, especially once you know the history of the Nazbol party. It's like, I get why people use it, to accuse others of being Nazbol. But it's like, this is a specifically Russian thing. Like, you don't even know what the Nazbol in the DPRK Gaming Center base. They're going to have
I'm in the water park. I'm in the back of the water park right now.
Dude, they're getting so good at wrestling out of nowhere. They had some hammers this year. One of them upset this guy who beat the American who was seated first, and everyone's like, who the fuck? He was throwing like JV moves too, like headlocks and stuff that usually doesn't work at the Olympics, and he was crushing everyone with it. So shout out the DPRK wrestlers. Are Dem Socks and Sock Dems the same thing? Also, which membership tier will get the Carlos book? You will get Carlos's book, both books, if you are a $10 member, either here on YouTube or on Patreon. Patreon will take less of your money, just so you know. But it's in the community tab or the members tab. There's a link to the ebook. You get really good deal, really, why we need American Marxism and the purity fetish. So we really try to hook our members up and make sure that you guys are getting bang for your buck and are getting some actual intellectual growth and stimulation from donating to our projects. You get both books, which is very generous of Carlos to make those available. But we appreciate our members and our Patreon supporters. So yeah, check them both out. Oh, but are Dem Socks and Sock Dems the same thing? Well, no. And social democracy is an interesting term too, because someone said this earlier in the chat, they used to be actual socialists. Like the Social Democrat, like Lenin was in the Social Democratic Party, and the name eventually changed and kind of morphed into this. I don't know the exact history of how the name kind of changed and morphed, but
it was the split in socialism. It was the First World War.
Right, but I don't know how social democracy, is that where it started meaning like capitalism, but with reformism? Is that where social democracy took on that meaning?
The thing is that democratic socialism, I hate to say this, but it's such a US pilled thing, because the democratic socialists here in Europe are social democrats. And the democratic socialists in Europe, they're the people in the communist parties, the old Euro communist parties. So no one calls himself a social democrat here. You notice that?
Democrat. Yeah, I always thought that was interesting that they all say democratic socialist.
So I think the democratic socialist as a category, I mean, politically is a way to distinguish yourself from actually existing socialism. Third position is a very Trotskyite pilled. But it's such an American thing. You don't see people in Europe calling themselves, because they're just social democrats. Because what the democratic socialists are here is literally just what social democracy has always been.
Did Allende explicitly call himself a democratic socialist?
I think he just called himself a socialist. He was collaborating with the Communist Party. The same year that Allende got elected, I think Neruda was the communist candidate, or the Communist Party almost won, and they worked together and brought Allende into power. But Allende loved Stalin. Please find me a DSA, an actual democratic socialist that loved Stalin.
I think there were some actually people in the USSR too who were pushing democratic socialism at that time, and they were kind of, unfortunately, like feeding Allende's pipe dream that you could have, socialism in an colonized country through democratic processes, not pipe like what's going on in Venezuela today is, technically started through democratic processes, but there's a lot of other things going on to deepen the revolution, arming of revolutionaries. Chavez, after the coup in 2002, kicked all the reactionaries and U.S. puppets out of the military. All sorts of things that Allende didn't do because they would have been considered authoritarian. So, that's Venezuela's a little bit of a different case, but Fidel was warning Allende, like, you got to get rid of these dudes in the military like Pinochet, or the U.S. is going to arm them up and kill you.
You want to get what the essence of democratic socialism in the West, it's bourgeois politics themed as socialism.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's bourgeois politics, standard progressive capitalism themed as social. It has nothing to do with socialism. And I think what people don't get is that the same way the class struggle in the nation has fractured itself into the most important poles is the working class and the capitalist. And that takes various forms, finance capital is dominant. But internationally, it's imperialism and those countries struggling against imperialism. And there's real, objective states that are a part of this dichotomy. There's real camps. And the democratic socialist is the person that says, I want a quote unquote socialism that's outside of that split. And you cannot have that. You can't have that. That's like saying, I want to harmonize the working class and the capitalist class, right? That's what the fascists tried to formulate, in their theory. It was about establishing a society that somehow, like the old school utopian socialists, harmonized that class contradiction at the basis of capitalism. It's very similar to the democratic socialists. And it's not possible because the contradiction is objective. This is why all of them at the level of philosophy reject the dialectics of nature, because they're subjectivists when it comes to how they think about dialectics.
And I didn't mean to, just to be clear, I didn't mean to compare Allende to like AOC and stuff. I only brought him up because it shows sort of democratic socialism in a different form, or in a more revolutionary radical form than what we get today. But most of the democratic socialists of today are Americans like AOC, who are just Democratic Party members. Harold is dead. Hopefully Harold's still alive. Thank you for the $10. Harold is dead. Appreciate you, brother. Pennsylvania Commonwealth ACP gang Viva Venezuela Bolivariana def to the ID. Oh, I better not say that. I'm gonna get banned. Thank you, comrade, for the $10 super chat. Absolutely.
Your phone's gonna blow up.
Yeah, right. I'm about to get a pager attack. 10 thumbs up to everything you said, though. Appreciate you.
Someone asked about the IWW. I was recently just reading Philip Foner's History of the U.S. Labor Movement, the volume on the IWW. They were anarchists, man. They were doing crazy shit. Like, they had these free speech rallies where they'd get on the soapbox and start preaching, and their first words were like friends and comrades, and then they would come and get arrested and they get pulled down. And their whole strategy for those rallies was explicitly getting arrested just so that they can overflow the local prisons and become such a tax burden on the local population that they had to change the laws. That was the strategy, like, seriously. And so these cats, they would bring everyone like west of the Mississippi over to like one place. They'd get on trains and they'd get to these places, and they'd go up to speak, get arrested, and then the next one would go up to speak and get arrested. And it was like a Charlie Brown type situation. And eventually, a lot of the times they won, but it was like months of people getting arrested, hundreds and thousands of people getting arrested. There was one time where Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, who would eventually become a communist, Rebel Girl was the name of her biography. She went while pregnant, and they told her, well, don't speak in the street so you don't get beaten by the police. Speak in the union hall or something like that. And she did that. She still got arrested, beaten. She got SA'd in jail by the officers. And the story came out in the newspapers of the IWW, and it was a big stint. It brought a bunch of people over. They got arrested, and then eventually there was the victory.
Dang. I don't know much about the IWW. I gotta look
Their
into
big
that.
thing was one big union. You have all these little fucking
Right.
craft unions. We need one big union.
Mm-hmm.
And industrial unionism instead of just direct action with industrial union instead of just like all this separate stuff, which is good. You know, unite. No more craft unions. You know, unite the working class into one union. But
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's a good goal. I don't know about the getting arrested strategy, but maybe we should try that. Let's all get arrested in my hometown till we become such a tax burden that they have to, I don't know, give me free housing.
it's something that like a 14-year-old. No offense to 14-year-olds. It's such a stupid strat. I'm reading this book and I'm like, how is Foner not clowning on them? But
Right. Well, do you have anything else you want to discuss?
I have something I want to plug. I don't know if
Yeah.
if that's okay, but
Yeah, go for it. I'm winding down.
after the few month hiatus, I'm back to teaching a class for the Institute's Marxism School. I'm teaching a history of ethics and moral philosophy, which is one of the things that I teach in a university setting. So if anyone wants to sign up for that, the classes that I have been teaching up to now, I did one on Marxist philosophy. I did 16 weeks on the basics of Marxism, Leninism, and then one on 20th century Marxist philosophy. And they were very dense courses, especially the last one. It was very difficult material to get through. This one, I'm stepping back and I'm making it more friendly to people that are not very advanced in their understanding of Marxism or the history of philosophy or anything like that. It's an intro course. It's one that I teach in a university setting. So it's a switch up from the last like 3-4 courses that I've taught for the Institute, but I think it will be good. And it's all going to be done also from a Marxist perspective. So I'll be showing you what the Marxist position on these different ethical and moral theories are. And you can check that out in our Selfie page. I think that's how you pronounce it. Let me see how to share the screen, just so that, because I put it in the chat for the people that are on live, but the people that are not on live, here it is. So Sophists, Plato, Aristotle, Kant, Mill, Hegel, Nietzsche, and then Marxism. So
sounds interesting. I would like to see the lecture on the sophists, especially since there's so much sophistry nowadays. That's interesting. Or I mean, that'll be an interesting class. Check that out. And also, my alpha male red pill course is coming out soon. It's how to be communist Andrew Tate with Eddie Liger. Just kidding. Maybe I should start selling like a red pill course. That'd be a good way to make money for the party, like a left wing red pill course. The real.
What's that thing that the Tate brother have? The War Room.
Yeah, the War Room is what they call it.
Communist War Room. I mean, that's what the IGG. Unless I misunderstand what the War Room is, but it seems like it's like a Discord.
Oh no, the War Room's like a pyramid scheme that the Tate. It's like
okay, I take that back.
Yeah, no.
It's
like
not like
how to be alpha course that they sell.
Okay. I thought it was like a Discord chat or some shit.
Oh no, yeah, all those influencers sell courses. The fitness ones sell fitness courses. The ones who tell you to be a man and pick up girls sell how to pick up girls courses. It's so stupid. Tanui Tahitian Fire, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate you, brother. Enjoy the perks that come with that. I also have something to plug here before we go on behalf of our comrades in the UK. So some of you know I interviewed Jesse Winnie on the last live stream. We talked for about an hour about British politics and the state of everything going on there. And they have launched their own media collective now. This is a lot of Marxist-Leninists in the UK who we trust. We know are good people. Not just Marxist-Leninists, but Marxist-Leninists who are going down to the masses and who agree with us on the failures of leftist strategy in the West over the past few decades. So these are really solid people. Launching a media collective reminds me a lot of the early days of Midwestern Marx and Infrared, when we were bringing together the people who would eventually form an actual party. I don't know if that's the direction Cyclone is headed, but it's a good start nonetheless, because they're almost a little bit behind where we are in the US. There in the UK, they don't have an ACP yet. So, I mean, they have some good parties, but either way, this is a really positive development within the old UK, the place across the pond there. So make sure you follow these guys, Force_Cyclone. Follow Jesse Winnie, our comrade. They're doing amazing things, and I'm rooting for them very much.
Some baked beans and blood sausage.
I can't make fun of them anymore. I can't make fun of British people's teeth or like inbreeding.
Hey, if they don't let us make fun of them, they're not our true friends. That's how it goes. That's how I agree with Zizek's comments on like Balkan racism. A true friend is someone who allows you to like be mutually racist with them.
That's true. Like I can't be, if they said something about Americans eating burgers, I wouldn't be offended. So it goes.
Hey,
both
we fuck
ways.
with the burger.
Mm-hmm.
That's objectively true.
All right. Anything else to add before we close out today? I'm tired. I got up early this morning.
I think now it's time to read the first half of The Science of Logic together, live on stream.
Let's go through it. Lecture time.
Anyways, this was fun, man. We got to stream more.
We do. Especially now that I'm doing it on weekends. I'll always throw out the invite to you and Noah and see if we can get you guys on more. And I'll try to stay consistent with my weekend streams. I got a really busy schedule, especially during wrestling season. But yeah, we love talking to you guys. And I got to do everything on TikTok needs to be so condensed. And I'm so worried about people's attention spans and hooking their attention. So it's nice to just be able to sit down and actually.
This is the smartest app. This is the app of people who have like attention spans longer than 3 minutes. It's nice.
It is nice. It is.
My TikTok streams, I've been doing like one every like 10 days or something. It's getting so boring because it's always the same fucking debates. I don't know if you've experienced this, but people only want to talk about the same shit.
Yeah.
And it gets very boring. But this was fun as well.
For sure. That's why I don't get how like Harry Sisson and those Democrat kids can stream for like 6 hours straight debating Trump supporters. They must be getting paid some good money for that. That looks
Clockwork Orange shit. That's
literally.
It's tough. I tried. I did one in Halloween. I tried to make it upbeat, but then you get the first question and it's the same one you've gotten every time, and you're like, I just want to crash out and just
throw my phone off a bridge.
Yeah, fuck this shit.
All right, folks. Follow us everywhere at Midwestern Marks. Thanks for hanging out today. Thanks to all the donos. We'll see you on the next one.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The international International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor. We defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come from above. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in a song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human